The new Everybody Hates Chris reboot premiered a few weeks ago and it took everyone by surprise, including me, because I didn't think it was going to be good. But it was. But that's because it looked like there was no confidence from the showrunner's point. Haven't heard much news since the first announcement, the almost terrible marketing strategy, and the few frames of animation I seen, I was worried that this was just going to be another lazy cheap adult animation with no care for the original source material. And then I watched it and was completely shocked at the fact that it's not a soulless cash grab, nor a useless reboot, but the fact that it's a sequel series. A sequel series that's actually good. Literally picking up where we left off from the original show.
What's it say?
You failed!
What?
Boy, I'ma slap you in the animation! Ow.
But I love that they decided to continue where we left off instead of re-establishing the characters and the world they live in. Gives more time for new ideas and for the story of each episode to develop than having to develop characters we already know about. They do sometimes have these character introductions and title cards of some of the characters, but you know, it's for viewers who never watched the original show. But there's still that essence that the original fans of the show would be familiar with. Chris is still an uncool, socially awkward teen that tries to overcome this perception about him, but still comes up short at the end. Rochelle is still the stern but understanding mother/wife who still is somewhat of a narcissist. Drew is still the cooler brother who everyone prefers over Chris. Tanya is the demon child who enjoys getting Chris in trouble any way she can. And Julius is still the hardworking family man who's still stingy. They did a good job of keeping the spirit of the original show and what everyone loved about it, while still adding new elements and ideas so it could still stand as its own thing. It's the perfect mix. The only character that felt off to me is this nigga Greg. In the original show, he was Chris' best and only friend that he could vent all his problems to, because they were the only two that could relate to each other. In the new show, Greg comes off as such a dick who feels he's somewhat better than Chris because of the whole dropping out and failing his GED thing. I feel like they replaced his role with this imaginary talking graffiti thing Chris talks to, who's voiced by Busta Rhymes, which is a cool character, I guess. But since episode 1, Greg just has this negative presence about him, and it don't get better from there. But other than that, I really like the show so far. The voice acting is good, with most of the adult characters returning back to do their roles is fun. And not to forget the animation and comedy. When I first heard news about Everybody Hates Chris returning to be animated, I was excited. Not only because one of my favorite childhood shows was coming back, but back in one of my favorite art mediums. But I never thought for a second of how well a show like Everybody Hates Chris could translate into an animated series. Honestly, on paper, an animated Everybody Hates Chris show isn't a bad idea, if done right. The original show already contained a wide cast of colorful characters with a fun and interesting time setting, and not to forget the absurd and wacky humor the show sometimes go for. Like, you can't tell me this show doesn't remind you of Family Guy, from the fact they literally have cutaway gags that are sometimes random as hell.
Oh, I'll help you. Yeah, I'll help you.
And I wouldn't be surprised if a show exec saw this and was just like, this show is like a live action nigga version of Family Guy. Let's turn it into a cartoon. And canceled after 1 season. But what saves this show from being like the rest of these terrible adult animations is that, like its original source material, Everybody Still Hates Chris has heart. Both of these shows do more than just trying to tell funny and crazy jokes. They provide some endearing moments when it comes to developing the characters or how the characters interact with each other. You get the idea that you're watching an actual family working together to solve problems that come their way as a family, rather than these shallow joke machines that only has one purpose of saying something crazy to get a reaction from the audience. Truly a breath of fresh air seeing an actual effort into bringing a past media into modern times while feeling like a shallow rehash. The animation and art style, which I was first worried about, looks great. They did a good job of capturing a 1980s aesthetic. From the backgrounds looking like these vintage paintings with the noticeable paintbrush strokes is a nice touch. Them adding a film grain layer over each episode is also a cool detail. And whenever we cut to a TV show insert, they add like this retro static filter, like All of this is real nice to look at. But what really surprised me is how fluid and expressive the characters and animation can get. I think the character designs are good. They did a fine job redesigning the original cast to fit this art style, even though they did make some small differences like Vanessa and Peaches being a few shades darker, Mr. Omar being tall as hell looking like he finna get drafted to the league, and Jerome, who the fuck is this nigga? But I love how fluid their movements is and how expressive the faces and body language can get, even when they're just standing there listening to another character. Like, there's so much detail even when they're idle. You could tell the animators put forth the effort to make sure this show has some life and personality, unlike other shows whose characters just stand around looking lifeless. And there's also some dynamic shots and camera work in here than other shows that's just animated so flat. Another thing I like is how they tie in the animation with the story and the comedy of the show. Like I said before, turning Everybody Hates Chris into an animation should translate well since the original show featured a lot of cartoony humor and elements. And they embrace this greatly with jokes that I would most def see on the original show, but it's just elevated more just from the animation, which also allows for some great visual storytelling. Oh yeah, I want to go out by saying that episode 2 is the best and funniest episode so far, no competition. The episode revolving around a block party is such a fun story idea. The setting allows for more characters and dynamics to be introduced and more funnier jokes than the first episode, which was more focused on the main cast and what to expect from the show. And the ending is without a doubt one of the best Chris sad endings and the funniest Tasha has ever been.
Wait, we're doing this now?
But overall as a package, Everybody Still Hates Chris is a really good show. And I probably will check out some more episodes in the future. And I would recommend you should check it out as well. I don't know how y'all gonna watch it since it airs on Comedy Central. And I know 90% of you motherfuckers that's watching don't have cable, so I'm sure you'll find a way.